Is Israel Adesanya a boring fighter? The longer that Izzy has been champ, the more and more criticism he has been getting as of late of being a boring fighter, and just jabbing and kicking his way to decision victories for his title defenses. But the question is Izzy actually a boring fighter, or do the fans not know what they're talking about? But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy MMA, I make opinionative MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it. When Israel Adesanya was originally making his way up the ranks, he was seen as one of the more exciting fighters in the UFC. The fact that he was extremely technical on the feet, alongside with great head movement, the fact that he talked a lot of trash, and also the fact that he got into some wars earlier on into his UFC career, just made him into a very entertaining fighter to watch. The most memorable fight that he had somewhat early on into his UFC career was actually against Kevin Gastelum, where that was a 5-round war. He also had very entertaining fights against Robert Whittaker, against Paulo Costa, but it seems like after that Paulo Costa matchup, Izzy has kind of went in a different direction, and it appears that he's looking to play it a lot more safe out there than he was in the past. And for this, he's been getting a ton of criticism as being a boring fighter. But now the question of the video is Izzy actually a boring fighter in my opinion, or do I not agree with that? Well, in my opinion, it comes down to a bunch of different factors. The first factor that I wanted to touch upon is the fact that Izzy is just getting better out there. And if Izzy is improving certain aspects of his game, and if there's a bigger gap between Izzy and his opponents now compared to what that gap was earlier on, it would somewhat make sense for why his fights are a little less entertaining, because he's just ahead of his opponents inside the octagon and he knows what they're going to do next. And due to that fact, they're just not as successful as they were in the past. Now, a counter argument to that you can definitely make is if the gap is bigger now compared to in the past between Izzy and his opponents, why wouldn't Izzy be able to put away his opponents quicker now than he did in the past, or even in general, because most of his recent fights have been decision victories for him. Now, I definitely think that's a fair argument, and I'll touch a little bit more upon that a little bit later. But the next factor that I wanted to touch upon is somewhat tied into the last factor, but it's the fact that his opponents just aren't moving forward as much. And we especially saw this in the last Jared Cannonier matchup, where Cannonier just wasn't really pushing forward whatsoever, and it appeared that he was content at receiving a decision loss. Now, maybe he was scared of getting caught with a counter shot, that's probably the reason why, but at the end of the day, I think there's an argument to be made, and I do agree with this. It's not Izzy's job to push forward if he's winning the fight and his opponents aren't doing anything. It's on his opponent to push forward and do something. And I think the better and better that Izzy has been getting, and the more title defenses that Izzy has been getting, the more and more this appears to be happening. And besides the Cannonier victory, we somewhat saw this in the Robert Whittaker matchup, the Marvin Vettori matchup especially, and it just seems like it's happening more and more to Izzy. Now, the next factor that I wanted to touch upon is the fact that Izzy may be getting complacent out there. And what I mean by that is if Izzy is just able to outpoint his opponent by just jabbing and kicking his way to a decision victory and not really take all that much damage himself, or really any damage honestly, and just consistently get wins, get money, and rack up title defenses, I guess why wouldn't he do that? Now, I think it's safe to assume if Izzy consistently got into entertaining matchups and consistently got finishes, more opportunities would arise for him in terms of sponsorships and just money in general. But at the same time, if he lost, a lot of those opportunities could then go away. Because no matter how good or how dominant these fighters are, there's always an opportunity for them to lose in every matchup that they go into. We saw a perfect example of this in Kamaru Usman, who seemed basically unbeatable. It seemed like he had a granite chin, which he definitely did, but then he goes into that matchup against Leon Edwards, and although he was dominating for the most part, he then gets knocked out with a perfectly timed head kick from Leon. So the point that I'm trying to make is if Izzy looked to be a lot more entertaining and looked to get a lot more finishes out there, even if he was better than his opponent, there's always an opportunity that he would get caught and he would get knocked out, or he would just lose in general. So I definitely think that's also a major factor and why Izzy somewhat changed his style ever since he started to get more and more title defenses. It's just the safest option for him. But now let's get into my opinion. What do I think about all this? Well, I definitely think there's good arguments made on both sides. On the side that says Izzy's a boring fighter, I definitely think it's pretty clear that his fights now are a lot less entertaining than they were in the past. I also think it's clear that Izzy has shifted his style into more of a conservative fighter out there, but at the same time, I also think it's a valid argument when people say it's not Izzy's responsibility to push forward if he's winning a fight in a decision. If his opponents aren't being aggressive enough and Izzy's just winning that matchup by decision, why wouldn't Izzy just take that victory? Why would he try to be more aggressive in trying to get a finish and give his opponents more openings to potentially catch Izzy? It doesn't really make all that much sense. So in my opinion, I feel like I kind of land between the two sides. I definitely don't think Izzy's a completely boring fighter. Whenever Izzy fights, I'm definitely very excited to watch it, but at the same time, I do agree with the statement that Izzy's fights now are just less entertaining than they were in the past. I think that's pretty clear to say. Now, one thing that I will say is I think his upcoming matchup against Alex Pereira is going to be very, very different than his previous couple matchups, because Alex Pereira beat Izzy twice and knocked him out once, but also he's an extremely technical and just an extremely good kickboxer out there. So Izzy wouldn't be able to fall back and just jab and kick his way to a decision victory. Alex is just too good of a kickboxer for that. And of course, on top of that, Alex is definitely going to be very aggressive out there, and he's definitely going to push forward. So although a lot of Izzy's previous matchups have been somewhat boring, I definitely don't see how this could possibly be a boring matchup. But if Izzy's able to beat Alex Pereira, it is interesting to see where he would go from there. Does he move back up to 205, try to get the belt there once again? Does he stay at 185 and just continue to fight the same guys, or could they find a different guy for him? It's just going to be interesting to see what happens after this matchup if he does win. But in my opinion, I definitely don't think that's a gimme. Honestly, at this point, it's very close. I keep going back and forth, but honestly, I feel like I may favor Alex Pereira in that matchup, as crazy as that may sound. But as that matchup gets closer, I'll then form a more formal opinion on it. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Israel Adesanya is a boring fighter, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoy the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out, guys.